and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
Hello there everyone, and welcome to this video with me today. Here I'm in the lovely Alps, and it was kind of hard to find a perfect spot because first of all it's very hot today in the mountains. It is a peak where you can't really avoid the sun. There's complete 100% solar exposure here, and I wanted to share this view because it aligns with the topic again of higher consciousness. And last year, if you remember, I made a video about cycles of illumination and the Atlantean experience too. And it was back in the summer, I think last year, 2017. And I also have a mini audiobook about the cycles of illumination and the Atlantean experience for those of you who are interested. But first of all, I have to say I'm probably going to have to wear my sunglasses today, which I do very rarely, and I usually don't like that, especially in the videos. I really wear them only in the high Alps, or, when I don't have any shade, and otherwise I really don't like sunglasses. But it's very hard for me to look because the light is just so intense and the eyes are sensitive. So as I'm going to start to talk, I'm going to put my little glasses on. But I really wanted to be in this environment. This will be a video in two parts. In the first part, I will share some insights with you, further insights about this whole grand cycle, of this experiment and experience, which is still playing out. And in the second part, we're going to do a little more deepen Elohim channeling about how we can approach this at this time, each of us individually, and how we can assist this process. Okay, so we're gonna look deeper into some of the topics where this is playing out now. And yeah, this is the time where I get to put my shades on because otherwise I don't see anything. So first I want to share with you some of the insights from this book called The Eye of the Centaur from Barbara Handclough. As I always share with you, her books are pure liquid gold. And yesterday I was reading this passage again about the holding of this Atlantean energy, and this experiment that took people or individuals at that time to a certain extent where they saw that they can do anything because they learn how to manipulate energy. And again, there are two basic elements here to talk about. One is the higher consciousness that was expanding, and beings that were getting illuminated and initiated at that time into the laws and principles of what it means to be an illumined being. And there was also beings who went more into the other stream of polarity. This is the place or the template on Earth at that time where the maximum polarity was being held, maximum polarity expression. And this is why things got so intense. And I made many videos about this, so I won't share about this again. But in this specific video, I want to share this insight here from the book and how this has been playing out now, specifically at this time, because so many of us continue to hold this worry over how things will unfold. And recently someone told me, I'm so worried what happens if the 5G technology comes out. I don't know what it will do, and we're gonna get sick, and everyone will have cancer, and or I worry about how all this gas, from all these motorbikes here in the Alps, because there's so much extreme in people coming here. This is extreme tourism, which is not the spiritual tourism, which is the inward spiritual journey, when you come to seek these places of high point of life force and ability for you to revitalize. And this is what I want to do with life force retreats in the near future. But basically for now, I'm exploring more, I'm observing, I'm being the observer, how the consciousness is taking us, is taking humanity at this next step, this next threshold, how things are coming to a certain maximum point. And we're going to discuss this more in the second video. And again, sorry, I have some ants climbing on me, and I'm not wearing many clothes because it's so hot. But yeah, and birds are flying like super speedy race here through the mountain air. So anyway, perfect environment, but little distractions. Anyway, there's always like this. So let me get back to the topic. This point of extremity is expressing itself on different points of the planet in different ways. So in my example, people always say, well, you have such a pristine environment here in the Alps. And there's two things I wish to say here. First of all is nature here, yes, the sacred space of nature is very pure. However, the environment is not. And this is where the disharmonious aspect comes to play out. And this is where we need to see that if this reciprocity is not met, which is the inner state of nature, for us to preserve it, to maintain it, to build laws around it that keep this in terms of preservation of the environment, this will be in the lack of that proportion, you know. So let's say nature has a certain capacity in which she can revitalize every year, especially during the winter time. And that's why winters are getting longer here, because there's extremity of how much energy comes in terms of how much this vulnerable mountain environment is ready or even able to process. We can assist this process to a certain extent, but nature is still her wild self. So what I want to say is that this is, for example, in my environment is being experienced, as I've shared with you before, through the intense deforestation and allowing of every single person to come here in whatever form they want, which is meant, well, you know, we have these bikers that are coming in these extreme, extreme numbers. Yeah, it's just too many of them. Their population is growing. And these are not the kind of individuals on the planet that they're seeking this higher connection. They're seeking this fast pleasure. They're pleasuring themselves, you know. They're pleasure seekers. They're not seeking a connection with nature. They're just coming there, you know, wearing all this leather, and there's so much gas coming out, you know, of these motorbikes. And people who are cycling here up the mountain passes and the hills, they have to take all this air in, and I have to take all this in when I'm, you know, just doing mountaineering or hiking. And then imagine all the animals, because it's so noisy here, and imagine how much animals here with the amplitude that's just so amplified. So this is, for example, in my environment in this Alps here, how this is being played out. This, you know, technology or profit is king, and it's not about how much we can value the reciprocity. You know, that's why nowadays no one watches videos like mine, because people are not interested in that. People are interested in how can we gain more profit, even in the spiritual terms, even in the spiritual community. How can we manifest more abundance for ourselves? Again, it's in terms of profit. But our true profit, you know, it doesn't have any sense if we don't have a playground or the environment to live in. I've shared this with you before. So in my environment, the extremity of this polarity is being replayed out. And you will see when I read an excerpt from this book, the parallel example or the parallel experience we're now feeling as these cycles are playing themselves out, because as you know, the nature of time is cyclical, and yet on the higher spiritual note it is spherical. So there is no linear approach to things, okay? But we are feeling aspects that the souls have experienced before, and a lot of souls are now tired of this constant energy transmutation. And when I was reading this in this book, I said, wow, this so resonates with where we are now, because there's a lot of souls, especially star-seeded beings, who are, in a way, they're just so sick and tired of constantly transforming and transmuting energy. They want to create or build something new. And the threshold here, and this is what I want to channel in the second message, is how can we plant seeds of the new when all the time we're just transforming energy? And basically, if we're always tired from this constant transformation of these dense frequencies, how can we then also have the power to channel through the new energies, planting the seeds of the new consciousness? And this is kind of like, people will feel this being in two worlds at the same time, because everything is intensifying. I'm being shown that people are, because the cosmic energies, we're in this cosmic dust cloud now, if we can call it even like that. It's this charged particles aspect of space and time, which are the same. And everyone now is acting or reacting to that differently. So some people are just getting crazier and they need to steam this off, like I need to steam off, right? So they're doing these things and they're steaming off through certain means or methodologies or, you know, ways of being that are not healthy. They're not really aligned with nature. So imagine coming here to this beautiful environment and you think you're going to be, you know, enjoying the spiritual experience. Maybe if you come to the top of the mountain, but recently not even that. You can hear motorbikers everywhere. You can hear this intense noise that's really, it's really annoying. And it's hard to channel. And I also say to Spirit, well, how can I be in this high frequency and channel messages, you know, for what I do if I don't have peace? And by the water, it's a little easier because the water kind of, you know, cancels out a lot of noise, but still, you know, it's how it is. So I want to say this first before I read you the example is because a lot of us are now feeling this tired feeling or a weight of constantly processing. Why are we of the light and we constantly need to process these darker energies and these waves of intense separation? Why, right? This is now coming up for a lot of individuals. So you're going to see in this example how when you let go of the resistance to this energy, basically the Atlantean energy expression is that intense polarity where technology is the king. That's the maximum experience that was playing out at that time. And it's because we say, well, Atlantis no longer exists. Well, it exists in consciousness. It translated through the consciousness of people that never graduated from that experience. They never graduated from this cycle, so they keep repeating it. They keep replaying this. So back in the days, you might have had, I don't know, crystal towers or something they created to manipulate energy intensely, but now we have, let's say, all this technology to steam, you know, our energy off, steam it off, right? So it's all, you have to see the energetic patterns that align with that. It's any time we think, well, I can get here to there without any effort, without anything in terms of investment. You know, bikers just sit on their bike. They don't care if they pollute and they create noise in this environment, which is very vulnerable, and a lot of animals that are very timid are living here. And if they are becoming more endangered that it's needed, it creates a space where the total environmental balance is distorted, you know, and that influences us too, because we will say, well, we're at the beginning, or on the other hand, a perspective, we're at the end of this, we call it the chain of life or whatever. But where we are now is really needing to let go of this need to sacrifice in terms of what we're needing to transmute this energy, because the life force of this intense love, of cosmic love, it's doing everything naturally. In one of the videos I've watched, someone said, how will we create this shift? And the person said, we won't create it, Gaia is creating it. So I'm tuning into Gaia and I'm feeling that she is without this control. People say, well, people get revenged, you know, by the planet if they do things the wrong way. It's not like that. Planet doesn't think in terms of revenge. It is complete love. It is just love of the self, love of its own cycles, love of its own nature, love of its own expansion, you know, in Ascension as well. So as this cosmic traveler that the planet also is, it does only that which needs to constantly maintain its balance. So it's not punishment what's happening now with what we call natural disasters. A lot of them are not natural, they're man-made, they're contributions. But Gaia is doing everything she's doing in just that natural metamorphosis way, which means she's simply doing what is necessary for her expansion. It's not like, oh, now I'm going to kill off these beings that, you know, damage my reserves or don't value my resources. But in a way, everything is still taken care of. Not always the way we see it, the human mind wants to control. But what I'm going to read you now from this excerpt is very much aligned with us needing to see this bigger picture, that we no longer have to hold on to that fear of what was in that day and age, which led to complete and total annihilation and destruction. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so this whole chapter describes, sorry, I had a fly inside, describes this initiation where the man by the name of Ikshor, was it Ikshor? I don't know. Sure, I don't know how to pronounce it in English, but he went through this temple and he went through these rites of passage. At a certain place he saw this scarab and he worked with this being who was like a light being, and he held this scarab which represented this Atlantean energy. Okay, so I'm going to read you the paragraphs that somehow align with that. I hope the wind is not too intense somehow. Okay. Let me see. So they were going through this process together, okay? Let me see where I'm going to start to read. So he comes to the seventh seal, and in the seventh seal he sees 3 interlocking circles of light, and it radiates out, and he is fascinated. So this is where he also sees this being called Minna, and he stands in front of him, and he had this scarab, and at that point it wasn't yet obvious what it was. But then he was being spaced out by, or numbed by the humming vibrations, because that scarab is the transmutation of the energy of Atlantis, and this is where the importance of this chapter begins. Okay. So, whoa, the wind is really intense. So Mena has many different levels of manifestation. So on the physical plane, it burns his hand, the scarab, right? What it represents. On the astral plane, it is pulsating so much that he's trying to hold it tight. And on the causal plane, Mena's heart and mind communicate with complete understanding. Mena has problems with the willpower, the will control of the Atlanteans also. The scarab is something of theirs, and he doesn't want this stuff any more than I want this stuff. He was talking before about really being tired because he always had to go to the energy source. He had to bring it to the kings, the rulers, and he had to go back and replenish, and he was getting tired of this process to leave a piece of himself and his energy there always. And then when he went here to revitalize, he experienced this tiredness of always doing this process through these mystery schools and the rites of initiation. So yeah, they have brought him here today, so you'll see later. So he was very much away in the upper kingdom. He was sitting in his room, his library, reading a scroll, and then he was sucked away and transported through time and space. He doesn't like it very much at all. And he found himself between those two beings. They were the griffins, and I don't like them. I don't like to remember them. He found himself between them, and they then said, "Hold out your hand," and they put the scarab in his hand, and he's angry, very angry, but his heart is the same as my heart. This is how they both feel. So he doesn't want to give it to me any more than he wants to hold it. It burns his hand because it is the energy of Atlanteans. And this is the important part now. He says to me, "I am very tired of transmuting the energy of the Atlanteans to the Egyptians. They have power over my being." So they actually used that as the gateway to continue this energy. Even if they were not physically present, the beings continuously use this as tools and means of continue this energetic cycle and keeping them locked in it. So they have the power over my being. Whenever they want to break it and make me do something, they do it. So do you know how rude they are? And that's one of their problems. There are still Atlanteans using those powers here in Egyptian time, and that was back in the days, back in the days, because they did not maintain the flow of energy from the positive to the negative, the polarity energy. Like I said, these are not graduated beings. They have maintained stuck in this intense polarity. And the way the polarity energy is contained on the physical plane is at the base of the pyramid. The base of the pyramid, the 4 points, are the 4 points of the polarity. The center is the fixation of the energy level. The Atlanteans had great powers in their manipulation of energy, the ability to manipulate energy. They could fly, they could crystallize. I was once also an Atlantean. We could split the energy in water. In other words, we were able to split the hydrogen atom in water. So we learned how to do that, and then we built our cities, our temples, and our ways of conveyance. And we got lazy because all we had to do was just take the energy and just do it. We became obsessed with our power, and then we committed the great sins. There were other beings on other levels of mentality. Some of them were savages and primitives on the earth. They lived in Africa, Brazil, China, in modern-day language. We bothered them, which was really not fair. We didn't do that to help them. We discovered we could take a whole forest away if we needed wood. Well, we're still doing that in our own way. And chainsaw is the new god because, you know, in the old days, if you have to really saw, you know, the wood, you don't do it like so often. But nowadays, you can just like come and chop it off in a few seconds. So we discovered we could take a whole forest away, and it's disgusting. We also started communicating with beings on higher levels than ours with our powers. And that is where we made the mistake. I don't know exactly how it happened. I don't know how and what triggered it. I just know the causes. There were good Atlanteans, and there were Atlanteans who misused the power. And toward the end of Atlantis phase, the beings of Atlantis found ways to make sure they still had contact on the earth plane. And this is also another second important point and the part. They built a pyramid, but more importantly, they built the Sphinx so they could have ways to get through to the Egyptians. In other words, if the Atlanteans could not figure out a way to have places on the planet, temples and places of transmutation of that energy, they could not manifest themselves on the physical plane. So do you see the manifestation of this energy continued through those temples? And this is what a lot of people miss out on when they see these temples as only a places of worship and great power and technology, but they don't really know what they worship if they come there unaware. So this is such a great point here. Watch me continue to read there. So When all the ancient temples have lost their power, this is the most important sentence here, then the Atlantean hold will cease to exist. So this is the polarity that keeps playing on. And a lot of souls incarnate, and with us continuously doing that and continuously transmuting it, and a lot of star-seated beings say, well, I'm here to transmute this energy. They're actually continuously doing that, which he realized at that point, I'm really tired of it. I no longer need to do it. I'm not here to do it, you know. So when Atlantis was destroyed, many people understood that the end was coming, as it always is the case at the end of a cycle. And this is what we're feeling now too. And I'm being shown, and I'm going to talk about this in the further channel message, how all these eras, you know, the precipice of one era and the moving into the next are the most challenging parts, you know, of the whole experience of this polarity playing out. So, sorry, again, flies in the book. And so, when that happened, they made sure they could get through in the future if they wanted to. Since they had attained total control over their astral bodies during their civilization, then as long as they could establish a place to tie into, if they wanted it, they could influence the world order. Like all beings, the Atlanteans were adept at experiencing many levels besides the physical. They became fascinated with the many planes of manifestation. They let go of their original physical balance and enjoyment of the body, and they began to value the other planes more than the physical. Like Icarus, they tried to become gods themselves. They tried to take the power of the gods. So all that is left of their influence is that they participate in earth balancing by means of the pyramid and the Sphinx. And they are very involved in initiatory rites, such as were practiced in Egypt. And you know, we talk about the continuation of the lines, the genetic lines. So basically the genetic line was maintained through these rites of passage. Okay, so now this is the important part of the release. This is the third important part here. So Mena, this being, was holding the scarab given to him by the Atlanteans for Ixchor, and Mena says, you have mastered the carrying of the energy forces to the power source. You have caused the dissemination of the energy out into the vegetative land. You have gathered back the energy from the vegetative state into your heart, and now you're ready to speak from the heart. And then Ixchor says, I receive my Ka, and you know Ka is the light body, the higher self spirit. My Ka has been in a jar in the lower kingdom. We are in the upper kingdom in the Thebes, and you're going to see something here like a wordplay here. We are in the temple in Thebes, the temple of light. And my heart was in a jar in the lower kingdom, Heliopolis. So you know, like hell, we say hell, Heliopolis, and Thebes, it sounds very similar to the heavens, you know, the Thebes, the heavens. So what has happened in Mena, so lower, higher planes, has just passed me, my heart, which means that because of my work and my obedience, I now get to my high self, which is my Ka. But this is where he got a higher understanding now. So my Ka has been fed, nurtured by many beings. We had various techniques for keeping the high self alive and energized so that it could return to the self, the spiritual self of the being. The key to this is to be found in the Book of the Dead, and Ixchor has much to teach of this experience over time. But the infusion of the higher self in Ixchor's life was completed when he was initiated to the cult of Horus. So let us return to the scarab. Now, Mena, that being, initiated Ixchor, right, back then when he was much younger. But now, when he met him again, this is what happened. So he saw Ixchor sitting in that chair in the temple, and he was shocked. He didn't know what to do. He stops dead in his tracks. Wait a minute, the wind is really heavy now. So he stops dead in his tracks. I'm going to wait a little bit in case it slows down, because then we don't hear anything. Then he walks over to Ixchor. Ixchor has his hands out together. Mena becomes as disoriented as Ixchor is. He takes the scarab like it's a hot potato and he puts it into Ixchor's hands. He normally would never do this, not in a million years. He's afraid. He's Ixchor's teacher. He has not seen him since the initiation, and he says, I initiated Ixchor according to the command of Ptah, right? I felt in Ixchor something special. I always follow the word of Ptah, and I did as I was told. I am the temple priest of Ptah. I did the initiation, and Ixchor became a priest of the cult of Osiris. And now I'm going to destroy him if I put the scarab from the Atlanteans in his hand. So this is where he had that fear, right? But he looks at Ixchor, and Ixchor speaks through the Uraeus, so it's the mastery of life force, it's the inner serpent, and tells him to put the scarab in his hands. So he does it. Mena stands and watches. Ixchor has become Horus with the golden headdress. His face is the face of the hawk. He's transfigured. This being knows something that Mena does not know. And Ikshar says, you are resisting the energy from Atlantis. He says that to the first being, Mena, right? You're ready to get that now, but you have to understand the scarab. You should have known that you could not hurt me if you gave me the scarab. Now you are ready, Mena, you are ready. Our third eye connection is so intense that the light is just amazing. Then the light in my uraeus lights up the temple inscriptions, and I read. This is also an important part. The fish swims down many streams. The fish continues to swim down the streams of death. The fish has swum down so many streams of death and annihilation that the fish will die. The porpoise. The water bearer carries the water to the hearts of the people and pours it from the jar. The water bearer, so the messenger of light. Ptah is the maker of that jar. That carries the water of the streams where the fish swim down, and the people drink water from the teachers of Ptah. Ptah. Then over the ages, the teachers of Ptah will fill the vessels of the earth with the waters of life. Horus. So he said, you are making the mistake of all teachers, says Ikshar to Mena. You will always have more wisdom than me, but you are not listening to me. You will never know what I have unless you can listen. You have underestimated me. You have projected your own fear to me when I had none of my own. And then he put the scarab on his third eye, and they heard the message together. Now this is the most important part. I'm going to try to hold my microphone like this because it's just so windy. We work together from the plane of light. My sight is obscured by my confusion over the layers. The layers are being removed, but they are not all gone. Those are the layers of the ego, the layers of the control of the energy. The scarab carries the secret of the divine wisdom. The scarab dies, and then the scarab is reborn into another essence. When the scarab dies and the new essence is born, you are not to be afraid of having the same energies in the new essence. You will not be destroyed by the energy, and you have people working with you. You have been chosen for a very special purpose. It was just let the layers go. If we just let the layers go and let it happen, there is nothing to fear. So Mena removes the scarab from Ikshar's uraeus, third eye, as the serpent mastery life force comes up. And then he places it into Ikshar's initiation ring, and Mena and Ikshar become equals as initiates of the cult of Horus. Like dung beetles, we are all parasites of the earth, which we can decide to deny or nurture. Okay, so what is this all about? You might ask yourself, right? maybe some of you are getting it, each in your own way. Let me see. I can put that back. So the main thing here is that a lot of individuals now carry a lot of this leftover energy, and there's this constant fear, and because of this fear, which continues to be prolonged, the final dissolution can happen, because if there's always a sense of, well, I need to transform this, I need to transform, and then at the same time we're allowing this to occur by worshiping these temples that we don't really understand what they were truly built for. And as you know, a lot of people go there out of tourism, out of, need to see something, to have a special experience, instead of starting to work with the inner mastery. Like in the past, they went through these mystery school teachings and initiations, and now we're being initiated through our own inner spirit, because there's beings who have advanced to the level where the spirit can directly teach without the interferences or intermediaries, especially the priesthood. So what is now occurring is that fear, which prevents us from experiencing the unfoldment like it needs to, and that's why so many people have these so-called prophecies, this will happen, that will happen, and a lot of it is memory from what already did happen, or projection of a certain alternate version of what we think will happen in accordance to what we say is prophecy. But what is prophecy is truly not what we think it is. There is no such thing as prophecy when you understand the natural law of constant creation, when we are constantly choosing on a conscious master level, and then allowing life to bring through the essences that need to be directed through our conscious presence at that time. So our conscious presence can really be active until we're still in this constant need to, transfigure this energy. We need to constantly take it and transform it and take it back. And it's like it's a theme of the cycle. We're recycling the energy, and this is what this being was doing until he realized, wow, I no longer need that. And when he realized, he replenished through his inner ka, the inner light body. He got that initiation. He saw a bigger picture, what the other being was still holding on to. He thought it's heavy energy. That's why it was burning his hand, because the belief was there. This is heavy energy. This is this intense polarity, and it's so vicious, it's so vile, and it's going to hurt me, and it's going to hurt the one I can pass it forward to, and I can't because he's below me, because I've just initiated him. I was his initiator or his teacher. And he made, like he said, the common mistake, what the teacher said, projects your own experience, your own fear onto the student, and you can't allow someone to grow into their own mastery and their own bigger picture. And this is what also continues to happen through all the dogmatic experiences and the preaching and the priests and all of that, because the experience has to be autonomous within us. It has to be independent and sovereign. So this is where we constantly are making the same repetition. I'm not going to say mistake, but it's like a recycling of energy. And until a lot of, especially the starborn people, because they are the holders of this reality, they are the main influencers, especially at this time, until they get it, until we stop constantly to carry this heavy burden that's now being played out. That's why I shared this first example with you in the beginning. It's being played out through these scenes, through people, like technology is the king, whether that's a motorbike, whether that's a chainsaw, whether that's a television, whether that's your device on the phone, whether that's a modern version of something that will make us more robotic. It's whatever it is, and the message that the Elohim have given me as I was walking up the hill, I'm going to give you that little preview before we do the whole message. They said that why, people hope so much for this higher, more advanced technology. Again, if the consciousness is not advanced enough, it won't come, because you can already see we're abusing the levels of what we're getting now. And if we don't master that, the new won't come. And if we keep on constantly having this heavy burden of what was, and it's going to happen again, we don't allow life force to act through us. And the second part of the message will be more attuned or focused specifically on how can we become more of a vessel without this constant need, I need to transform these energy. I'm this transformer, like the movie Transformers, and constantly giving ourselves this role. And we think, well, we need to. Well, who says we need to, right? Our consciousness is determined by the state of our expansion. So the more we expand, the more these layers, the more these falsehoods fall apart. And the more the truth can penetrate through it, and the more it's self-evident what's the next step. But we can't take the next step if we're still holding that energy of what used to be, or we're standing still. We can't go through the bridge. We can't make the crossing. We can make this stepping stone towards being initiated into the new, to receive new offerings of spirit. So let us move on to the next part, the message that will kind of maybe give us a more higher perspective of life, how we can become more of these vessels, how much more we can do. It will also focus on working with the angelic energy, how we can receive these angelic initiations so we can be more refined, more attuned. And yeah, I have to go off the sun because it's so super hot, so I don't burn here. The sun is super majorly intense last few years. So I'll see you in the next part of the video update. I hope you will join me, and thank you so much for watching and staying tuned and being updated with the higher consciousness. And if you're interested, please just go to the last year's video about the Atlantean experiment and the cycles of illumination, and also a mini audiobook on my page that describes this process even more in depth through the whole experiment of life, through the Elohim perspective. It's a part of my Elohim series. So I'll see you there and in the next video.
Come into my world, the world of the elven song, magical.